Hi, I want to have a bit of a chat to you about dehydrations and the implications of not consuming enough water. So, during the day, one of the key functions that your blood serves is to remove heat from the core of your body. Your body's generating enormous amounts of heat all the time. Your muscles, whenever they work, they create heat. All of your organs, when they're working, they create heat. And if you don't remove this heat from your body, well, you'll basically cook yourself. The way the body removes heat is that it traps it in molecules of water in the bloodstream and then deposits those molecules of water in your sweat glands and in your lungs. The water that goes in your sweat glands just evaporates off into the atmosphere and you don't really notice it leaving unless, of course, you're in a very humid environment, which then means you'll just accumulate a lot of sweat on your skin. The water that goes into your lungs comes out as water vapor in your expired air. A lot of you use that water vapor to clean your sunglasses. So this water is leaving your body all the time. And there's different rates at which it leaves. For example, if you're in a really hot environment or if you're exercising intensely, the rate that water can leave your body can be quite extreme. Now, this water is coming from your blood. When you're expressing all this water during the day, and perhaps if you're not replacing it, the end result is that you experience a lowering of your blood volume and a thickening of your blood. This then compromises the efficiency of your circulation to the point where you may stop getting adequate blood flow to your brain. As soon as your brain's not getting enough blood, it's also not getting enough oxygen or glucose. And so a couple of reflexes are switched on very quickly to remedy this. The first reflex your body experiences is that you start to yawn. That 10:30 a.m. yawning that you experience, that's mostly not because you're tired, but because you're dehydrated. A lot of people wake up dehydrated and don't remedy the situation at the start of the day. So when we start yawning, what do? A lot of us go looking for a pick-me-up. So we'll go looking for a cup of coffee or a can of soft drink or soda, as it's called in some countries. Some will go outside and smoke a cigarette looking for a nicotine hit. Others will look for sugary treats like chocolate, etc. And some will even indulge in the energy drinks. And, in my opinion, the energy drinks are probably worse than the cigarettes. But either way, what happens when you go and you do that thing and you come back, you feel better. But the reason you feel better is probably because you walked somewhere and that walking pushed your blood pressure up, which got blood flow back into your brain and got more oxygen and glucose back to your brain. So in essence, you haven't rectified the situation and sooner or later the symptoms return. Now, eventually the body's going to go for the second reflex response. It's plan B. And it's designed to do two things. Number one, to slow down metabolic rate, to reduce heat production. And secondly, to get your body horizontal so the blood can flow more easily to the brain. And of course, this second response is sleepiness. I reckon the reason most people fall asleep or get sleepy behind the wheel of motor vehicles is not because they're tired, it's because they're dehydrated, because most people in the Western world are chronically dehydrated. Now, I could sit here and talk to you for 2 hours about the implications of dehydration in many, many diseases. The most common ones are hay fever and osteoarthritis. You see, cartilage tissue, it gets its sponginess and its slipperiness from its water content, and it gets its constant update or upkeep of water supply from the blood vessels that permeate the bones. Now, if you're dehydrated, the cartilage is just about the first tissue to lose its water supply. Now, that's not a problem in the short term because we're talking microscopic amounts. But over a long period of time, that then can lead to the cartilage tissue drying out, which creates friction in the joint, which leads to inflammation and joint breakdown, and you ended up needing anti-inflammatories or joint replacement. So back onto your water intake. If you're not drinking enough water, you end up dehydrated. Now, a couple of other things happen that give you some warnings. Firstly, when you are dehydrated, your body doesn't have enough enough water in it to produce the amount of urine that you need. So when you do eventually pass your urine, it's concentrated and it's darker in color. Some of you will notice that your urine when you wake up in the morning is quite dark. This is because you wake up in a state of dehydration. When you're really properly hydrated, you should be urinating fairly regularly, every 2 or 3 hours, and it should be very close to water-coloured. So there's a bit of a clue there. Now, of course, if you're taking vitamin B supplements, your urine will be yellow for a few hours. So how much water do you really need? Well, we worked this out back in about 1983 or 1984. We were doing research into this, and we worked out that the average person probably should be drinking about 1 litre of water for every 25 kilograms of body weight every day. In imperial measurements, that's about 1 pint of water for every 25 pounds. Now, you might look at that and think, wow, that's a lot of water. I mean, I know some people that wouldn't drink that amount of water in a week. But here's the thing. If you're not used to drinking water and you go to drinking that amount of water tomorrow, it's going to run straight through you because your body's really forgotten what to do with it. So it can take some time. So my recommendation is that you start at about half a litre for every 25 kilograms of body weight, and over 4 to 6 weeks, slowly increase it up to the recommended dose. Now, on top of that, the best way to start the day, as soon as you get out of bed, before you do anything, is to drink 25% of your daily water intake. So that means if you weigh 75 kilos, you need to work on getting used to drinking 750 mils of water as soon as you get out of bed. And it might be difficult for a start, but you'll get good at it and you'll find it easy to do. That way, by the time you shower and dressed, your body will be hydrated, and then you'll be choosing to eat breakfast from a conscious decision rather than reacting to some form of cravings. Now, if you are working out in the heat, or if you are training really hard, you're going to have to pick your water intake up. How much? Well, I don't really know because there's so many variables involved. But I will say this. If you're working outdoors and it's really hot, you should be drinking enough so that you need to have a big urination every 2 hours, and that urine should be watercoloured. If you get to the point where you're not urinating or your urine's really dark in colour, you're dehydrated and you need to get out of the heat for a while until you're properly hydrated. When you're working with other people, you should also be taking note of whether they're taking breaks or not too, because heat stroke isn't far away. Now, if you've just had a big training session and you're drinking water and you're wondering how much water you should drink, I just say to people, keep drinking copious amounts of water post-training until you start passing clear urine. Then you'll know that you're properly hydrated. Now, also in those situations where you are expressing a huge amount of sweat, you do need to replace minerals because your body's losing a lot of minerals. And so taking a mineral supplement is a good idea. If you want to use sports drinks, I caution you to dilute them because there's a lot of sugar in them. And sometimes that can slow them down going through your system. But either way, it's important to be really aware because I've worked with construction workers who work out in 45, 50 degree temperatures out in the centre of Australia. And some of those guys, by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, their urine is bright orange. It is so dark from dehydration, and they've already drunk 15 to 18 litres of water. So don't be tardy with it. It's really important. Now, we can go even further because you imagine what happens to the walls of your arteries if your blood is thicker than it should be all the time. As it's pushing through the arteries, it's creating friction, and that does have to lead to some damage to arteries. And it was really encouraging to see a study published in The Lancet very recently that showed that elevations in blood sodium levels were a direct indicator to a shortening of lifespan and a risk of chronic disease. Now, of course, one of the first things that happens when you're dehydrated is that the concentration of sodium in your blood rises. So is it the increased sodium, or is it the lack of water, or is it the increased thickness of your blood? I'm really not sure. More work needed. But the indicators are there. Now, I've seen oftentimes that, articles come out saying you don't really need to drink that much water, water's in your food. Well, those articles are just dead wrong. And if you listen to those without further investigation, well, that's at your own peril. Get good at it. It's got to be water. It can't be Coca-Cola flavored water or beer flavored water. It just needs to be water. And, a lot of cities have got good water. Some don't have great water, but all water utilities need to use chlorine to keep the water sanitized. That's the way it is. There's nothing else that keeps the water in a sanitary state all the way to the tap. So I reckon it's a good idea, if you don't already have a filter, to purchase one. And if you can't afford a filter, fill up jugs of water and let them sit overnight, because most of the chlorine will evaporate off. Whatever it takes, keep drinking, take good care of yourself, and help your friends to see this message too. Because really, when you are fully hydrated and you keep your blood volume up, you're doing so much to create better health for yourself, and you are drastically reducing your risk of disease. So thanks for listening. Wishing you all the best.